Hello and welcome, Exiles, to a build deep dive on my Volcanic Fissure of Snaking Juggernaut. I kind of browsed over this build in my build overview of the league, but I have since decided to make a forum guide on this character, and I wanted to do a dedicated video to go along with that forum guide. So, this is going to be quite a long video. I'm going to go over all of the items and everything in as much detail as I possibly can. If I forget anything, let me know in the comments below. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll try to answer them the best I can. I'm not really good at doing I'm not really good at doing build guides. So, we're just going to give it a shot. And, I don't know, I really like this skill and I think it's really fun and more people should play it. So, starting off, let's start with our Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. This is a new transfigured gem, and this, unlike the normal Volcanic Fissure, doesn't have the projectiles at the end of the eruption. This instead continues to snake to nearby mobs and continue to erupt. You can get +1 additional eruptions per 20 quality, and the gem comes with 2 additional, and along with 60% of fizz converted to fire, and we get 50% more area of effect. We're stacking this alongside of Ashes of the Stars. This gives us up to 30% increased quality of all of our skill gems, +1 level of all skill gems. All of our gems gain increased experience. This means that we're gaining a total of 4 eruptions for our Volcanic Fissure. So, as far as our Volcanic Fissure goes, we're supporting that with Pulverize for the increased area of effect and more area damage, Inspiration for the mana cost and more damage multiplier, Endurance Charge on melee stun because of our stun threshold and how often we stun enemies. This is just a more multiplier, along with we're gaining a lot more damage per endurance charge. Next, I'm running Awakened Elemental Damage with attacks, or WED. You can also run normal, non-awakened version. This is just a more multiplier for elemental damage, as we're converting all of our fizz to fire. Next, I'm running Awakened Melee Fizz. Again, this can be normal melee fizz, and this is just a more multiplier for our fizz damage before it gets converted. We have these socketed in a lore weave. So I guess I should mention Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. If you're in Trade League, this is a really cheap gem. There's not a lot of people playing this build. If you're an SSF, you can just run normal lab. It's probably, I think it's like a 1 in 30 or a 1 in 40 to get this gem. So, we have it socketed in a lore weave. Why? Well, it gives us 6 sockets right off the bat, so we don't have to worry about socketing the body armor. It gives us a lot of flat fizz damage to attacks and a lot of crit chance. It also gives us a ton of elemental damage, and it says our maximum resistances are up to 78. Now, that means that we can't ever go above that on max res. Like in my case, 77, I can't ever go above 77 all res. Next, I have the helmet. This is an Abyssus. This is kind of a staple in most melee fizz builds. It gives you a ton of fizz damage, crit multi, armor, and it gives you increased fizz damage taken, but we're mitigating that in other ways. The +1 power charge corruption, this is not needed. I dropped an Abyssus in a map, threw a Valorb on it, hit +1 max power charges. I'm using it for the build. You don't have to have that. Next, Ashes of the Stars, we already went over this. We are anointing Serpent Stance. This gives us crit chance, crit multi, and block chance because we're wielding a staff. Speaking of our staff, we're using a new experimental base. This is an Eventuality Rod. This has the implicit for +1 power charges, +1 maximum endurance charges. As far as the staff goes, you don't need the 6-linked. And along with that, you just want as much fizz damage as you can possibly get on this. So, I have a, T5 hybrid increased fizz roll and a T4 increased fizz roll. Okay. Also, I have a T7 flat fizz. This is this is like a good middle ground staff. You can do a lot better and you can do a lot worse. I put a little bit of accuracy rating on this and attack speed, and then the increased damage per endurance charge craft. This is big because of how many endurance charges we're stacking, this is just a massive more multiplier for our damage. Going to our rings, our first ring is attributes, so we need the dexterity and the int. We're getting a little bit of flat fire damage. And then the main thing here is curse enemies with flammability on hit. Because of how our Volcanic Fissure of Snaking works, every time that it snakes and it erupts, we curse all of the enemies with flammability in that explosion. And because of how much AoE we have, we're pretty much cursing the entire screen with flammability. Our other ring is just resistances and max life. Our gloves, the gloves themselves are not really important. You just want armor, attack speed, res, life. Like, you can use kind of whatever you want in this slot. The main thing here is the implicits. You need the exerted attacks deal increased damage for Eater of Worlds, and then the Searing Exarch, you want Herald of Ash has increased buff effect. This is another big more multiplier for our damage. Our boots and our belt, this is where the build gets really cool. So we're using Ralakash's Impatient. These say that you count as having your maximum number of Endurance, Frenzy, and Power charges. Now if you notice on the top left of my screen here, there is no Power, Frenzy, or Endurance charges. If I go to my character sheet, I have 10 out of 10 Endurance charges, 4 out of 4 Frenzy charges, 5 out of 5 Power charges. So I'm gaining all of the buffs from the charges, I just can't ever spend them. Which that brings us to our belt, Arn's Anguish. This is a really, really cool belt. It gives you +1 endurance charges, and it says modifiers to minimum endurance charges and did apply to minimum brutal charges, and maximum brutal charges equal to maximum endurance charges. You gain brutal charges instead of endurance charge. So, brutal charges give you a 3% chance to deal triple damage and a 10% increased stun threshold per endurance charge. Because we have 10 endurance charges, we're gaining 30% chance to deal triple damage and a 100% increased stun threshold. Now, even though it says it instead applies to minimum brutal charges, we're still also gaining the effect of the endurance charges because of Ralakash's boots. So it's kind of double dipping, and honestly, I kind of expect this to be patched next league. If it's not, I would 100% use this combination because this is wickedly strong. So, going over gems. I already went over our main 6-link. Let's go over our secondary non-mandatory 6-link. So in this, we have our Leap Slam, we have our Seismic Cry, we have our Life. Those are linked to Life Tap, faster attacks. We have a Molten Shell with cast when damage taken. Again, this does not need to be 6-link. Leap Slam for movement, Seismic Cry. This gives us knockback chance and reduced enemy stun threshold, so we're always stunning enemies. We have increased AoE. The cool thing about Volcanic Fissure of Snaking is anytime that you do your first attack, whatever you put into that attack, so like if we Seismic Cry and then we hit our Volcanic Fissure, whatever that first fissure has, it continues to have that through all of its preceding eruptions. So we're just gaining a ton of AoE based on our Seismic Cry here. Cast when damage taken Molten Shell, this just gives us a way to prevent a lot of damage. Next, I'm running Herald of Ash along with Determination. Herald of Ash is just a massive more multiplier for our fire damage. Because we are 100% Fizz converted to fire, this is just a lot of burning and a lot of fire damage. I'm running a Lightning Golem for the increased attack speed. I'm running a Portal Gem, just because I don't like carrying Portal Scrolls. Ignore the fact that I have them in my inventory. Next, I'm running Herald of Purity. This is a massive more multiplier for our Fizz damage before it gets converted to fire damage. And I'm running Blood and Sand. This gives us more AoE or more area damage. And it depends on what you want to do. You can run Blood stance all the time. You can run Sand stance all the time. You can flip them back and forth. I just leave it in, I think it's a Sand stance, just for the more AoE. I'm running a Cast on Death Portal because softcore, and I paid for 6 portals. I'm going to use all 6 portals. That being said, this build doesn't really die a lot. The only thing that I've really died to in this build was Cirrus and Maven. That's pretty much it. And I did burn all 6 Maven portals and didn't actually get to kill her. Next, I'm running Ancestral Warchief and Ancestral Protector. Both of those are linked to multiple totems and combustions. Now, I don't use... Actually, I should say Val Ancestral Warchief, because I don't actually ever use the normal Warchief. I just use the Val variant. And this gives us another massive more multiplier to our fire damage, because our totems are constantly hitting the enemy with combustion, which gives them... which ignites the enemies, which gives them minus 10 fire res. On top of our flammability, we're getting like almost negative 30 fire res to enemies. Alright, so next I want to go over Ascendancy and our passive tree. So, there is a path building below, and it does have a leveling guide you can level with this character. So I'm not going to go over this in the leveling order, quote unquote, for the passive tree. I will mention that starting with Ascendancy, the first thing you want is you want Unflinching. This gives you a chance to gain endurance charges when you're hit. You get a 25% chance if you were to gain an endurance charge, you gain like maximum. It gives you +1 endurance charges and an endurance charge if you've been hit recently. Next, you're taking Unyielding. This gives you increased damage per endurance charge, area of effect per endurance charge, 25% chance to gain an endurance charge when you stun an enemy, and increased stun duration on enemies per endurance charge. These two nodes, because we are converting our endurance charges to brutal charges, these two nodes work with the brutal charges. So when we get hit, we pretty much shoot up to 10 brutal charges instantly. Along with when we hit an enemy, we gain brutal charge. Next, we're taking Unbreakable. This gives us armor from our equipped body armor is doubled, and 8% of armor applies to fire, cold, and lightning damage taken from hits. This is just a really, really good defensive measure. Finally, we have Undeniable. And this gives us flat accuracy rating, gives us attack speed per accuracy rating, and we gain accuracy rating equal to twice our strength. So that means we're gaining almost 250 accuracy rating, and we're sitting at like 600, 700-ish accuracy rating. So, as far as passive tree goes, it's a little bit weird because we're taking a lot of jewel sockets and a lot of like power and endurance charge nodes. So starting out, we were taking armor and strength. We're coming up to Warrior's Blood for the strength, Heart of the Warrior, and Born to Fight. Coming over, we're coming down to Measured Fury. This is Warcry's exert 1 additional attack. And the Warcry Mastery, this is very needed because this means that our Warcries cannot exert travel skills, so we don't have to worry about our Seismic Cry exerting our Leap Slam. Next, coming down, I'm working on taking Brinkmanship for just more area of effect. We're coming down to Dismembering. This gives us crit chance and crit multi along with maim on crit. We're taking the Crit Mastery for 25% chance to... 25% crit strike against unique enemies. Next, we're taking Golem Blood. This is just more life and life regen. Taking a Jewel Socket, +1 max endurance, +1 max frenzy charges. Coming down to Disciple of the Unyielding. This gives us +1 minimum endurance charges. We have a chance to gain endurance charges on kill, and we get increased damage per endurance charge. This is the reason that I'm setting it +1 brutal charges even in my hideout, is because of the belt and this node. For the Charge Mastery, I'm taking 3% increased damage per frenzy, power, and endurance charge. In total, we have, 19 charges? So that is 19 times, that's 27% more damage just from this one node. Coming up, we're taking Call to Arms, so our Warcries are instants. That's why I have Seismic Cry on my left click. Bloodless, so enemies can't leech life from us. It gives us more life. Coming to the Fire Mastery, the weapon damage. We're taking Lava Lash, so our damage of weapons penetrate 8% fire res. This does stack with our flammability along with our other curses. The Fire Mastery, this is where we're getting the rest of our fizz converted to fire. So like we talked about before, we're getting 60% of our fizz converted to fire from our gem. And this is converting the other 40%. So we're 100% physical to fire conversion. Coming up, we're taking Juggernaut for increased armor and max life. We're taking another jewel socket along with +1 endurance charges. Taking barbarism for life, max fire res, and fire resistance. Again, the maximum fire res does nothing because of our body armor. We're always at 77 maximum all res. Coming up, we're taking disemboweling for the crit chance and crit multiplier. Taking a cluster jewel socket, which I will go over momentarily. Coming up, and we're taking devotion along with the life mastery for +50 to max life. Coming across, we're taking the staff nodes for increased damage with and ailments. With staffs, we're getting 10% chance to gain endurance charge on crit. Counterweight gives us crit multi and crit chance with a staff. Coming up, again, we're taking another jewel socket and another +1 max endurance charges. We're taking the elemental damage node for 5% of Fizz's extra fire damage. This happens before our damage conversion, so it's just a 5% more multiplier. Elemental mastery that gives us 25% chance to treat enemy monster resistances as inverted. So this may sound weird considering that we're using stuff like flammability, we're penetrating elemental resistances. This comes in super handy in boss fights because there's a lot of bosses in the game that you can't really touch their elemental resistances with curses and whatnot. This just flips them. So like Shaper having what? I think he has like 25% all res. Or sorry, 75% all res. This just means that he has -75 fire res. Don't quote me on those numbers either. I totally made them up. I can't remember what Shaper's actual resistances are. That was just an example. Coming up, we are running Sovereignty for the reduced reservation of auras. We're taking Purity of Flesh for fire and chaos res. Coming up, finally, we're taking Blunt Trauma and One with the River for elemental damage and crit chance and crit multi with staffs. So, going over our jewel sockets, I'll start with cluster jewels. So, you want a large cluster jewel with Fuel the Fight and Overlord. Fuel the Fight gives you attack speed, it gives you attack damage leached as mana, and an increased attack damage while leeching. This takes care of any mana problem that this build has, if it had any. Next, we want Overlord. This is 30% increased damage with maces, scepter, or staves, and melee hits have a chance to give us Fortify. So we're pretty much perma-fortified. Jewel sockets. So the first one, you want Flat Fizz and attack speed, and then Corruption for whatever you don't have on your flasks. So for this, I have Maim and Hinder. The jewel socket, this is a Sublime Vision, and I will pull it out here so you can see it. This says, auras from your skills have 25% increased effect on you, +1 max endurance charges while affected by determination. Auras skills other than determination are disabled. So you're probably guessing, you're asking me, like, why am I still able to run these 3 auras? Well, if we look, Herald of Ash is technically a purity, right? Along with Herald of Purity. It's a purity, it's not a aura. Blood and Sand is a stance. Again, it's not an aura. So the only aura we have is Determination. So, next, let's go over our Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh Jewels. Okay? These give you Tawahoa's Forest Strength, and this grants you trigger level 20 Tawahoa's Chosen when you attack with a non-Val Slam or Strike skill near an enemy. So, you'll see this in the map demonstration. I'll get a little buff up here. It's like a little tiki torch looking thing. Yeah, this. I can show you this. So this is really cool. It's from the Chieftain Ascendancy, and basically it summons a Mirage, kind of like a Mirage Archer, that just slams with our Volcanic Fissure of Snaking. So we get an extra slam every time we attack. It does have a cooldown, but it's 1 second, so as you're running around, you're just constantly getting him. So, next is, we have That Which Was Taken. This is a really cool jewel that was introduced this league. I'm sure you've seen many people talking about this on Reddit and on the forums. This one specifically gives us life, energy shield, and mana on kill. So, this is, This is kind of like having Slayer Leech, but instant. Because of how much AoE we have and how much explosions we have, we're just constantly recovering all of our, 2% of our life, mana, and ES. It gives us a 22% chance to gain phasing for 4 seconds on kill. Phasing is just really nice. I don't know, it just lets you move through enemies, if there is any. It also says that we have 6% increased area of effect for endurance charge. This is the main thing that you want on this jewel. You can have anything else that you want. You need the increased AoE per endurance charge. And it says, well, you have at least 5 nearby allies. We have Onslaught. So combined with our Herald of Purity that gives us 4 Sentinels of Purity, along with our Lightning Golem, we have 5 nearby allies. As long as we don't run away from them, we have Onslaught. Onslaught gives us attack, cast, and move speed. So, moving up to our Wildwood Ascendancy. This is where things get really cool. Now, I don't actually have mine finished because I for the life of me, can't find King of the Mists on this character. I found it on all my other characters, just not this one. We are a Primalist, and that is because we have a rucksack, which is really cool. That's what this little thing is, if you don't know. The charms is what makes this really, really powerful. So I have War Cries grant 5 rage per 5 power if I have less than 25 rage. This is just a free rage generation. It also gives us Chaos Res per endurance charge. Now, ideally, that's actually not the charm that I want. Realistically, you want a Juggernaut charm of the Juggernaut. This gives you increased area of effect per endurance charge and Chaos Res per endurance charge. So this means if you have 3 of these, you have 150% increased area of effect. Because we have 10 endurance charges, each one of these would be 50. It is just a massive AoE multiplier. And that's why I only have 1, and I would ideally have 2 of these. And I would instead decided to take the Warcry node just for the rage generation. So, I know that was a lot to go over. And I'll kind of give you here's a general overview of the tree. But this build is very, very fun to play. Alright, so let's run a map. We'll run a port map because it's kind of open. We'll run a tier 16. And let's see, what can we get? We cannot run Elemental Reflect on this build just because of the amount of elemental damage we take. So, also, if you notice, there's now, like I said, there's portals open here. I realized, after I had recorded this, that OBS just had stopped recording. So, yeah, you guys didn't get to see any of the map run because I have a keybind that stops OBS recording, and I clicked it and didn't realize it. So, we're going to show you a port map instead. So, the way the build works, like we've talked about, is we're going to walk around with Warcry on our left click, and then I have Volcanic Fissure on my right click, and you just walk around, and you tap your Volcanic Fissure, and everything just kind of explodes. This is without MTX, by the way. I will show... We'll do part of the map without MTX, and then I'll put MTXs on, and you can see the really cool Herald of Ash explosions. Also, I am leveling gems on this character. Alright. Where is... There we go. So there we go. You can kind of see the explosions. So let's put on a MTX. There's a little bit of a single target demonstration. So let's go to our Herald of Ash, and let's put a Sun Prism on it, and I'll show you the explosions with that. Alright, and let's switch it to, let's not die. Let's switch it to Celestial. which, I don't know, I kind of prefer the Celestial version, but that's just me. And you can see, even though we are losing life, as soon as we hit a pack of monsters, because of our jewels, we just instantly shoot to full life. I'm probably going to lose this Delirium because I was swapping MTXs and not really paying attention. Hey, we did get some oils out of it, though, and a Delirium Orb. You can see here's another rare, just getting one shot. By the way, I do want to mention with this character, with Volcanic Fissure of Snaking more specifically, your explosions can overlap. So with how much AoE that we have, both and how many times the Fissure's snake, you can hit the same target multiple times per attack. There's you a nice single target with that rare. And you'll notice when we come to the boss here that our single target is really, really nice, which honestly, single target was never the issue with melee skills. It was always the clear speed. And this build does both. It has really nice clear speed, and it also has the really nice single target. So, let's go in. Let's clear. I know there's going to be a pack on the left over here, so let's clear these. And then we're going to walk up to the boss. We're going to drop our Val War Chief totems. We're going to drop our other totems. We're going to hit our flasks. And we're just going to walk around. And we're going to tap right click and explode everything. And we can even kind of stand here and attack in place. And you can see, like, if I go outside here, you can see, like, the amount of AoE that we have is just, it's screen freaking wide. So, yeah. Alrighty, so that's going to be the end of my deep dive into this build. I know it's quite a long video, but I wanted to cover as much as I possibly could in this build. And hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, let me know. If you have any questions on the build, any specifics on jewels or crafting, let me know in either the comments or the forums, and I will try my best to help you. Hopefully you guys did enjoy, and I will see you in the next video.